What is up, everybody? Welcome to First Round Fantasy, the fantasy football podcast from us, Jacob Bartley and Gabe. What's going on, man?
Dude, not a lot. Good day today. Been a good day so far. I'm scared to say
your last name since I messed it up last time. So I started I watched the episode as soon as we aired it, and then I was watching it again the other day, and that cracked me up so bad when I said your last name wrong.
Not only my last name, but my first name too. Gabriel. Come on.
Well, I'm calling you
Gabe from now on.
Hey, you the GM, bro. Oh, that's a good nickname. The GM.
I like the sound of that.
There we go. And it's your initials though. So like it's not like it's just random, you know. That works. Okay. We got the GM in the house. Yeah, so today we have a couple topics here that we wanted to talk about, things that we would find interesting. There's not any major news, like nothing huge news wise, unless something broke today, but I don't think anything did. So. Yeah, so we're gonna talk a little bit about, because Yahoo Fantasy Sports and ESPN Fantasy Sports are the two platforms that we've both used a lot. So we're gonna talk about what we prefer there. We're also going to talk about some number 2 or maybe even number 3 wide receivers that we think could emerge as a number 1. And when I say number 1, it could either be as the number 1 option on their team, which every number 1 option on every team is a decent fantasy option at least, and or a wide receiver 1 in fantasy rankings. Either one works for this discussion. And yeah, so we'll get to that in a little bit, but I do want to talk about real quick a couple things in that new news segment. And one thing is Derrick Henry signs his new contract. Finally, I hate when these teams franchise tag these guys, and especially when they're a running back like Derrick Henry, who is just a pounder, right? And he could get injured easily. If he gets injured while he's on a franchise tag, he's screwed. They have insurance, but his career's done, basically. And so I'm glad he finally got a deal done. He got a 4-year, $50 million contract, $25 million guaranteed. Look, I think it's a good contract, but when I see these Christian McCaffrey deals and these Patrick Mahomes deals, it makes me feel bad for Derrick Henry because he's a beast. So what do you think about this, man? Do you think it's a fair deal?
I mean, it's the best deal that they could have gotten. And when you look at it, like you didn't even mention Zeke. Zeke got a great deal.
That's what I'm saying.
$90 million last year. Todd Gurley got a great deal, 4 years, $60 million. Running backs just don't get paid. Like for the work that they do, they're not rewarded enough because it's a high risk, high reward position in the NFL. Yeah. So it just really sucks. But as far as benefits are concerned, if you own Derrick Henry in a dynasty league, for instance, that's got to make you feel reassured, because if you own shares of Derrick Henry, you know he's staying with the team. And I did a little sneak peek at next year's upcoming free agent class. Dude, it's going to be stacked.
So I saw that. Oh, my goodness.
Right? We can just run through a few of them. Likely, Christian McCaffrey will stay where he is. Alvin Kamara might. But then you got people like Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Leonard Fournette, Kenyon Drake, Kareem Hunt, Todd Gurley, James Conner. Oh, my goodness, galore.
That's crazy. Right? And when Derrick Henry was on that list, I was like, oh, my God.
Yeah, so the chances with a field of that many people and that much talent, when there's that much to go around, it becomes less likely that you're going to find an ideal landing spot.
True.
So to know that they locked him up and you own a share of him in a keeper league or a dynasty league
on a great team too. Look, Tennessee went to the AFC championship last year, man. Unexpectedly, they beat the Ravens, man.
That was a good one.
Yeah. So we're both big fans of Derrick Henry. I know you have him in a keeper league. I have him in a dynasty league. So
that's why you smiled.
Oh, of course. I was smiling for both of us because I know we both have him in a. And you know, we don't need to get into it. Nobody knows our actual leagues, but you got lucky getting Derrick Henry recently in that league. Oh, that's all I'm gonna say.
I wouldn't say lucky.
You traded for him right before this season, like the season where he finally emerges as like a top 5 running back, like hands down, maybe even better than that, which I don't understand. Like a lot, I saw some running back rankings, right? And they said the Holy Trinity, the locked in best 3 are Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and Ezekiel Elliott. While I don't disagree with that, Derrick Henry, while he doesn't catch passes that well, or he doesn't even, it's not that he doesn't catch passes that well, he doesn't get the opportunity to necessarily. I think he might be a better running back than all of those guys, but not a better pass catcher than those guys. So,
yeah, whereas some of those backs that you mentioned are like, spectacular utility backs. They kind of jack of all trades. Derrick Henry is a pure runner. Like, so he is a hard-nosed bruiser, goal line specialist type of running back. So standard leagues and even in half-point PPR leagues.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, if people still play in no non-PPR leagues,
people do.
I mean, they do, but I don't know why they do. That's ancient. But he might be the number one pick in those leagues, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I could see that happening.
Yeah, for sure. Well, good for you, Derrick Henry, man. Hey, just collect that money, man. You're a beast and you deserve it. What other things? So, what do you think is going to happen with preseason? So we've heard it might be 2 games, might be 1 game. Right now, it's officially 2 games, but it might go down to 1 game. It might go down to 0 games. What do you think is going to happen, and what do you prefer?
Oof, what do I prefer? Well, I mean, when you think about it, 4 games for a long time, people have always said that, like, that's way too long. That leaves a lot of room for injury and whatnot. So hearing that side of it, you're like, okay, let's shorten it to maybe 3 games. 2 games I could see possibly, but the only people that I see this really kind of hurting are 1, players that are joining new teams, and 2, like incoming rookie players that need to get in sync with their quarterbacks, get in sync with play calling, defense or offense, and same thing with those new players. So less time, less practice. Not only are we talking, preseason games, we're talking training camp and everything. All this is going to be altered this year. So maybe the last few years you've been thinking like, oh, these rookies, they're going to do great things. Come to find out this year, with that less time to prepare, you might not want to jump the gun on some of these rookies thinking they're going to just come out of the gate, which they hardly ever do. But especially this year, like, you just might not see them, hit their ceiling right away. It's going to take some time because everybody's on a learning curve this year. And with a shorter preseason, it's only going to make it that much more difficult.
Yeah, this is going to change things. Like, there's been a lot of times where players build preseason buzz. And a lot of times people say that it doesn't matter, but I think it does. We've seen a lot of players perform well in the preseason and then end up being legitimate fantasy options. So it's going to take away that, because if there's 1 game, right? If you have a guy who balled out for 4 preseason games, like a rookie running back, you're feeling pretty good drafting them. If they ball out for 1 game in the preseason, it's going to unnecessarily hype up their value, and it's gonna be weird. It's gonna be something different, and especially if there's no preseason, which that would be very odd. And I'm curious, what do you think about if there's no preseason? Right? Does that change when we draft? When people draft?
I mean, I don't really know. I mean, it's common for a lot of people to draft, the weekend before the season starts.
Oh yeah.
The week of the season starting, there's always that Thursday night game. Some people like to do it the Sunday before, the Saturday, the Friday. I don't think necessarily that's going to change too much. People might draft a little bit sooner, knowing like, hey, my guy's not going to sustain a life-threatening injury in a preseason game. Or I shouldn't say life-threatening, but career season-ending injury. Yeah. But no, I don't think it's going to affect drafting.
Life-threatening.
I didn't mean to say that.
Hey, it's possible in this sport, to be fair.
It is. I mean, look at Ryan Shazier. He's walking again, but holy cow, that sucked. And he's a trooper for going through all that.
Yeah, I think it affects. I think it's okay for dynasty and keeper leagues to draft a little bit earlier if there's no preseason. But redraft, no. Wait till the last weekend, because we saw, like with Deebo Samuel, they can get injured in practice. They can get injured just in their social life. Like, you never know. So we'll see. But speaking of drafts and things, so Yahoo Fantasy Football and ESPN Fantasy Football, we've played on both. And we've played different types of leagues on both. So And I think typically we know what each other prefers, but I just want to have this discussion. For people out there listening, maybe it's their first time playing fantasy football, or maybe they're looking for a new platform. All right, let's start with a redraft league. If they're doing a redraft league, what do you lean towards, Yahoo Fantasy or ESPN? And I include those two because, at least for me, those are the two best. I don't know about you. Do you think there's one that's better than those two?
No, not necessarily. I've played the NFL app before. That was not so intuitive, but
and the CBS one sucks. I'm just gonna say
I've never tried the CBS app, but I'll take your word for it. I played the NFL one though, and I still know people that do. And
NFL's not bad. It's just these other ones are so advanced.
Yeah, and I know that when we started a league not too long ago, the Pick 6 Keeper League. I just love that name.
Yeah. Well, it's great because it's a 6 keeper league and Pick 6, so it's great.
It's not like I put too much thought into it or anything. But that being said, we started that league in ESPN. And then 2 summers ago, we transferred it over to Yahoo. Now, you might say, oh, that's because you prefer Yahoo more. It's probably the case. Now, having more experience with Yahoo, I love the interface of it.
Yes, the interface of Yahoo is amazing.
Yeah, and like fantasy players today, unless you're like, one of the pioneers of fantasy, been playing it for 25 plus years, you're going to be using one of these bad boys, all right? You're not going to be surfing the web before games or looking at the newspaper for injury reports last second. You're going to be using your phone and you're going to be using the app.
Oh, man. Right? It's so crazy to me how long fantasy football has been around. Yeah, and I can't imagine these people checking the newspaper for the stats, man. It's happened. It happened.
People used to keep track of scores. Yeah, in the box scores, essentially.
Well, they used to write it down. They have to.
They have to write it down. Imagine being that guy in your league. Oof, that's too much power. That's too much stress. I wouldn't do it.
Yes, absolutely.
But, the Yahoo interface in the app, especially, and even online, is intuitive and use. And I love their commentary weekly, like the weekly roundup of a summary of a player's matchup and recap of past games and stats.
Yeah, it's that all. They put for Yahoo's not a sports company, but they have the Yahoo Sports part of their company.
Yeah.
And they put so much thought and energy and money and quality into it. And I love that, even though like ESPN is a sports company, and I feel like Yahoo puts a little bit more effort into it for at least the platform and the design of the app and all that stuff.
Most definitely. Yeah, I do enjoy Yahoo. One thing that came to mind, though, when we were thinking about like little things we might tweak or change, do you remember the reason why we switched from ESPN to Yahoo?
So here's the thing. Here in my notes, I wrote this down. I said Yahoo allows pick trading.
Mm-hmm. And it will keep track of your picks throughout the season and into the offseason. So that's a really big plus.
I love that. But also ESPN allows off-season moves. Is the thing.
Players on your roster.
Yes. So the thing is, like, we could have been making all these trades. We've had trades happen in our Dynasty and Keeper leagues over the offseason. We have to keep track of them in a spreadsheet because we mainly play in Yahoo leagues. And that's fine. But everybody wants to see their players in front of them and make trades. Mm-hmm. When we were doing ESPN, we were able to make trades all offseason. We could make a trade right now, and I could send you a trade on air, whatever. But we can't do that with Yahoo. So I do think it's like, what's more important to you? So I think if for me, if it's redraft, go Yahoo, no question. But ESPN's okay, it's fine, but go Yahoo. If it's a keeper or dynasty league, it depends on what's more important to you. Is it more important to have the app keep track of your picks, which is important because we have. How many trade picks do we have in some leagues? It's crazy. So you have the commissioners have to keep track of those. Or is it more important to be able to actually make trades in the offseason and then just keep track of the picks, or keep track of those transactions? So it just depends. So I don't know, man. So it just depends what's more important to you, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely a debate worth having. But this might be one of our first things where, everybody always looks to do this when they're doing a YouTube channel, which you guys are obviously going to be watching this on right now. So why don't you just comment below and let us know which app you prefer to use, whether it be the new ones, or I should say the old veterans, Yahoo, ESPN, NFL, or some of these new ones that are coming along. Sleeperbot, I hear a lot of people enjoy the Sleeperbot app. And there's a few other ones out there. Maybe there's ones I haven't heard of. So let us know.
I don't understand why can't ESPN have the pick trading, and why can't Yahoo allow offseason moves? It doesn't make any sense to me. It can't be that hard. I really can't. I don't understand it. So if you guys know one that does both, let us know, and we might be switching our leagues to this. I don't know about this year. Probably not this year, but maybe next year. We're going to start a first-round fantasy league.
That'll be fun.
We have to. And it'll be all the members, whoever the members are of this podcast and the YouTube channel at the time. And then maybe we let some viewers join. We do like not a competition, but a raffle, whatever it is. And we leave 2, 3, or 4 spots for some viewers. I think that'd be really cool.
That'll be fun. That's a great idea.
And I think we make it redraft, and we, each year different viewers get to join. I think that would be awesome.
That'll be fun.
All right, so let's move on to our segment that we came up with. So basically, and actually you came up with this one. I got this idea from you, and that was second wide receivers or second options on teams as far as wide receivers go, who could possibly emerge or surpass that number 1 wide receiver on their team, and in doing so, possibly become a number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. So what we basically did, I said, come with 3 to 5 names. We'll name those 3. The other 2 are backups in case we steal each other's. But even if we don't, we'll name those last 2 as honorable mentions. So let's go one by one. So you name one, we'll discuss it. I'll name one, we'll discuss it, so on and so forth. So Gabe, what is your first choice that qualifies for this?
I will certainly lead us off. However, I'm going to lead it off with a speculative assumption of what could be, because this first player that I have, we don't have a lot of numbers to go off of, not a lot of data to go off of, but it's just the thought and the hype and the potential of what could be is why I really like this player. And that's N'Keal Harry, 6'4", 225-pound wide receiver.
You've been talking about this guy.
New England Patriots, yeah.
Hey, with Cam Newton there too, I like that better now that Cam Newton's there. Last time we discussed him, Cam wasn't there.
No, and those one thing, and I think you can agree with this too. We've agreed on this before. I love big, tall receivers who are going to win those jump balls.
So
and again, I'll repeat it. 6'4", 225. That's a big dude in the end zone.
Dude, why do you think I love Kenny Galladay so much?
Kenny Galladay, there's so many players like that, and I want them all, man. But anyways, N'Keal Harry is my first pick. Now, when you think of New England Patriots, you think of Tom Brady. Goodbye. Insert Cam Newton, or maybe Jarrett Stidham. We don't know yet. Edelman would be considered the number 1 wide receiver there. So N'Keal Harry, So N'Keal Harry last year, as a rookie, was injured for most of the season. Came in later, played about 7 games, I think. Didn't do too much with that, but a couple of reasons.
Dude,
obviously,
Tom Brady spreads the ball around to everybody
so much, and obviously that offensive mind of Bill Belichick. I mean, they have an offensive coordinator, but that team literally goes through Bill Belichick. So when you think about that, there are just so many options. And there are no-name players, and then there are big-name players like Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski throughout the years that become valuable, but you just never know. That's why the Patriots are always so risky. There's hardly ever that sure thing, especially in these last 2 years when you talk about the New England Patriot options. But this year is different. I do believe that Cam Newton is going to be the starter. I do believe that he has to build or establish a connection with another player. And I think, and I want that player to be N'Keal Harry.
Look at guys like Kelvin Benjamin, who we saw Cam Newton have great success with early in Kelvin's career. So it's a similar type thing.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'm glad you brought that up. Similar build, similar type skill set. I just think that even with Cam Newton, that team is going to be successful. They're going to have a lot of red zone attempts. And you think of somebody like Rob Gronkowski, who built a career finding his way into the end zone. They need that next big presence. They don't really have a tight end right now, unless they trade for David Njoku, which we talked about last week. But right now,
they should have got OJ Howard back in that trade for Gronk.
There's so much time left.
I don't know why they didn't do that.
Right?
Maybe Tampa Bay wasn't down to do that.
I don't know. But in the end zone, I think is where he will thrive. And I was actually watching some of his tape earlier, and he gets a lot of those like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 7. He runs those quick slants, those tight tucks, and he converts a lot of 3rd downs. He's almost like a sure thing when you think about it. So I don't know if that carries over with Cam Newton, but he seems to kind of be that all-around athlete that they're looking for. And I just think he has the potential to possibly put up wide receiver 1 numbers. And again, when we talk about wide receiver 1 numbers, we think about a 10-team league, a 12-team league. And then when you look at those players specifically, can a wide receiver be, a top 10 or a top 12 wide receiver in that league? So that's kind of how we look at the value.
Exactly.
So if I say
a lot of people don't understand that, what wide receiver 1 means.
Exactly. So I thought I'd just bring that up.
I like that. I like that you mentioned that.
Yeah, if I say N'Keal Harry is going to be a number 1 wide receiver, he's not going to be the number 1 overall wide receiver, but he might be one of the 10 or 12 if you're playing in a 12-man league.
And again, these are. I know we have a segment at the end of the show called Bold Predictions, but these are bold predictions.
Oh yeah, I said speculative. I think some other ones that I have later are going to be a little bit more backed up. But this one is purely hype and speculation, and I think it could be a possibility. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Well, I know you've been on the N'Keal Harry train since the beginning of last year. You drafted him in the Dynasty League, I believe, and I know you kept him as in your IR spot. So, and you still have him. So that's
all right. I'm ready to hear yours. Let's hear your first.
Yes.
One.
All right. Look, my number 1, I'm so excited about, and I'm so glad you didn't still take my number 1, but that would have been okay. That's why we have backups. My number 1, who's going to merge as the best receiver on their team and possibly, like we said, a top 10, top 12 wide receiver in fantasy, is DK Metcalf. This guy is a freaking beast, man. Honestly, I think there's a couple other names, but there's 3 or 4 names where they're on the verge of just becoming a wide receiver 1, overtaking. And in his case, it's Tyler Lockett. Look, Tyler Lockett is so solid, and he's performed very well over the years, especially with Russell Wilson. And he's a great wide receiver, and he's been a wide receiver 1. But I think, DK Metcalf, I don't know the exact numbers, but he had something like the most red zone targets last year of wide receivers. And that's crazy. And he didn't score a lot of touchdowns, but he had the most red zone targets. And coming from Russell Wilson.
I'll interject really quick. You were right about that. He was top 5 too with those red zone targets. So he was getting a lion's share towards the end of the season in the red zone.
Yes. So I love this. He's a big guy too. He's huge, and he has a cool name. And I just it's weird. All right, look, I'm a Niners fan, right? So during the era with the Harbaugh era where we were going up against Pete Carroll and the Seahawks went to 2 Super Bowls in a row, I hated the Seahawks. I've came around to respect them in the past few years, past 3 or 4 years. And especially Russell Wilson. He's honestly, I truly believe this. I believe Russell Wilson is the best quarterback in the NFL. I've been saying this for the past year. He is the best quarterback in the NFL. And I'm not just talking about fantasy. I'm talking about real NFL. He was the runner-up for MVP behind Lamar Jackson last year. If you remember, Patrick Mahomes got hurt in the middle of the season. He wasn't playing that well until the playoffs. So Russell Wilson, the argument with Russell Wilson is Lamar Jackson has an amazing team around him and so much to work with. And Lamar Jackson is great. But Russell Wilson is carrying that team on his back. Their defense isn't good. Their running backs are always injured. And Russell Wilson is like a running back himself. And he's just chucking it to these great wide receivers. And Pete Carroll's a great coach, so they make it work. But I honestly think for me, MVP is if you take that person off that team, how is the team going to perform? And I think the Seahawks would do terrible. I think the Ravens would still be good without Lamar Jackson. So, and again, Lamar Jackson is absolutely incredible, but I just think you have Russell Wilson with throwing to DK Metcalf, and I just think this is the year. Look, it's Tyler Lockett's been the guy for several years, but DK Metcalf was right here last year, and I think DK Metcalf just surpasses him, becomes at least a top 12 wide receiver this year.
Yeah, I'm kind of jelly because that was my second player that I was going to mention. And I know that you said you didn't have the numbers offhand. I looked up a few, and they were pretty good, man. And as far as Tyler Lockett is concerned, he's also very solid. They were similar in targets last year. Tyler Lockett had 110. DK Metcalf had 100. So, little discrepancy there. However, Tyler Lockett has a higher catching percentage. He caught 82 passes
for sure,
for 1,000 yards and 8 TDs, whereas DK Metcalf caught, I think, I didn't write that one down, like 50-something catches for 7 touchdowns and 900 yards. So eerily similar in that respect. The Seattle Seahawks are a run-heavy team, though, when it matters, and Russell Wilson is also a scrambler, like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. But I do think that Decaf is going to – Decaf. He's Decaf.
That's a great nickname.
We found our first nickname, man.
That's a great nickname. That's perfect. The thing is, like, Decaf is like a less potent coffee, like a non-potent coffee. So it's kind of an insult, but hey, but Decaf works, man. I like it.
No, he makes everything clean. Better. Like, you ever just drink? Do you drink coffee straight up black? No, but right? You need a little of that creamer. You need a little bit of that creamer decaf. I don't know. Decaf is. We're sticking with it. Decaf. We're gonna find a way to make it.
That's great.
What I was saying though is, they're a run-heavy team. I expect his targets to go up, similar to that Tyler Lockett. So, I mean, obviously they're already the same, but I think his targets have to go up this year. And I think because of that, he's going to produce more. And if he shores his hands up a little bit more, you could be witnessing greatness next season. So something to look out for sure. Good choice.
All righty. What is your number 2 choice? Or it was DK Metcalf. So
DK Metcalf.
Your backup, or who's your number 3 choice, I should say.
Yeah. So my number 3 choice is my number 2 choice.
Yeah. That's why I said bring backups. If we only brought 3, we would have been screwed.
We would have been screwed, right? So I'll rephrase that again. So he is technically my number 3 choice, who is a number 2 wide receiver, but was looked at last year as a number 1 wide receiver. Do you know who I am talking about? He was looked at as a number 1 wide receiver last year. And this may have
ended up being the number 2, right? Is that what you're saying?
Technically, he is the number 2, but due to injuries, he was looked at as the number 1 on his team all year long.
I can't think of it right now.
That is Tyler Boyd, wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Duh.
Right? He is also a big boy, 6'2", 203. Oh, not to mention, this is a trend here for me. You're going to notice because DK Metcalf also is 6'4", 229.
Yeah, so and I think this is fair because I think a lot of people assume if AJ Green's back fully healthy, he's the number 1. So that makes Tyler Boyd the number 2. But you're right. Last year, Tyler Boyd was their number 1.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up AJ Green because I saw a recent ESPN report saying that AJ Green, he came out and said that he feels healthy coming into this season. And not only that, he's 31, I think. He said it himself. He expects to play another 4 years of football at a great level. And we have to – so it wasn't last season and it may have not been the season before that, But AJ Green is a legit stud for fantasy and the NFL. When he is healthy and on the field,
he was at top 5 for several years.
Exactly. So when he is on the field and he is healthy, he is a force to be reckoned with. And I think over the last season and a half, because injuries have plagued him, people have sort of overlooked him and began to look elsewhere. So if he came out and said that he's healthy and he's ready to play the next 4 years, I don't know if that's necessarily all with Cincinnati, because I think his contract's up after this year. But if he stays in Cincinnati, he's an unquestioned number one, especially if healthy. So with that being said, that brings me to Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd was forced into that number one role last year, and he played with some lackluster Andy Dalton quarterback play last year, still managed to come up with 90 receptions, 1,000-yard season, and 5 touchdowns. So nothing to write home about, but still really solid numbers. And I just think with a new quarterback coming in, Joe Burrow, that there is potential to find potential to build a relationship, a connection with Joe Burrow. And it's going to be a matter of time before we realize who that player is.
For Cincinnati this year.
Yeah, they got a lot of hype around him.
Dude, Mixon is bouncing back. He bounced back at the end of last year, and they just got a lot. They got a lot going on there. I don't know if I'm necessarily a fan of Joe Burrow yet. I'm not going to come out here and just say he's awful. I'm not going to come out and say he's great. I'm going to say he is what he is, and he's got to prove himself just like any rookie quarterback would have to. So the verdict's still out on him. But as far as being an upgrade from Dalton, I don't know. He has a higher ceiling, I guess you could say. The potential is there. But as far as Tyler Boyd is concerned, when AJ Green was there a season and a half ago, and they were sharing that workload before AJ Green was injured, he was putting up solid numbers as well. Oh, yeah.
So he is an unquestioned top tier wide receiver 2 on his team, and he's a great wide receiver 2 in fantasy.
Yes.
This year, if he builds that connection with Joe Burrow, again, speculation, we don't know these things yet. If he builds that relationship and connection with Joe Burrow, and AJ Green maybe isn't as healthy as he seems to be, as he claims to be, look out, folks, because that is a very easy choice for a wide receiver 1. And even if he doesn't finish as a wide receiver 1, he will still be a solid wide receiver 2 this year.
Absolutely.
And it does play though.
And look, he's going to play with Joe Burrow. And not that this matters for this year necessarily, but there might be a situation where like they know they're going to be together for a while, Boyd and Burrow. So maybe they feel more invested in building a connection together. So who knows what they're doing? Maybe they're working out together more. I could see Boyd and Burrow becoming better friends and getting along more and working out together more than him and AJ Green. AJ Green's like 8 years older than him or so. So it just, that kind of stuff does matter, because you see like Edelman and Brady, right? Look, Edelman's not the greatest wide receiver in the world, but because him and Brady have such a great connection, Edelman was always his number one receiver. So if him and Boyd have a great connection, I have nothing to back that up, but I'm guessing just because they're younger, they might get along better. Maybe they have a good connection there.
Yeah, only time will tell. I just think the potential is there for a solid wide receiver 1 performance this season from Tyler Boyd. Let's hear it. Back in your court. Ball's back in your court.
Yeah, so you and I, we texted about some obvious ones, and I do have some of those as honorable mentions, but I want to jump to one that's not such an obvious one that I think is a possibility here. And so I'm looking at the New York Giants, and I'm looking at Darius Slayton. So, and look, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but when Sterling Shepard was coming back from his injury last year, I was expecting him to just for sure, hands down, be the number 1 target in New York. And he did okay here and there, but look, Darius Slayton performed pretty damn well last year in spurts. So I like Darius Slayton. Again, I'm trying not to pick the obvious choices here, and I think a lot Darius Slayton's under the radar, right? A lot of people don't know his name. but I am seeing his name a lot. And honestly, he might be even in a redraft, he might be the New York wide receiver, the New York Giants wide receiver that you want on your team. You know, I was a believer in Sterling Shepard, but like it just never happened. And I know he struggled with injuries. And I thought once Odell left, Sterling was going to be the guy. And again, I think the same thing goes with Daniel Jones and Darius Slayton. Maybe they were both rookies last year, right? So maybe they're facing the same challenges. They probably hung out a lot together last year, and they might have a good connection. So I think Darius Slayton, I don't necessarily think that he has a chance to become a top 10 wide receiver, but I do think he has a chance to become the number 1 wide receiver target on the New York Giants, which would then make him a very, very viable fantasy option. But I think his ceiling for this season is a high-end wide receiver 2. That's his ceiling. I'm not saying he's going to get there, but I think it's possible. But I think I feel good about him going into this year.
Yeah, I think that's a solid pick. I looked up a little bit about him. I didn't even think about him when I was thinking of wide receivers today. Yeah. He had 8 touchdowns last year. That is great for a wide receiver.
Great. A rookie wide receiver? That's what I'm talking about. That's amazing.
Yeah, and just another player to build a relationship with Daniel Jones, build that rapport. That's a great pick. I like that.
Awesome, man. So what is your number 3 pick?
Now
your number 3 pick.
Yeah, now my number 3 pick. I would say he is in that Darius Slayton range, kind of like how you explained him. Like he could be the guy that takes over for that number 1 target share, maybe not finish as a number 1 wide receiver, still a strong wide receiver 2. But again, this one's kind of speculative. It's kind of a dart throw, but I'm just going to throw it out there because I love him. And this is Preston Williams, wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, that's a good choice. I like that.
And if you don't know who Preston Williams is, you got to YouTube this guy's highlights. He was insane for the time that he played last year before he came down.
Big guy.
Oh, yeah. 6'5", 218. Now, when you think of Miami, you think, wow, Devontae Parker came out and absolutely proved his worth finally last year.
I'm excited about Parker too.
Yeah, I'm excited for him as well. I'm also excited about Preston Williams. As a rookie, he proved that he could play in the NFL. It was unfortunate. His season was cut short. He played exactly 8 games. And in those 8 games, he had 32 receptions, 500 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Now you're thinking, wow, that's not a lot. Well, even if you double that, that's 60 receptions, 800 yards, and 6 TDs. Still not a lot. But what you have to think about here is he had a lot of success because when you look at those first 8 seasons, that was when the Miami Dolphins were like, oh, are we playing Josh Rosen or are we playing Ryan Fitzpatrick? We don't really know. They didn't know if they wanted to be really, really crappy or really, really bad. And I think week 10 of the season, Dolphins still had a chance to make the playoffs. It was kind of crazy. They went on this weird random win streak towards the end of the season. And I remember they were actually playing the Browns. And that game literally decided who was going to have the number 1 pick because at that point it was just decided that these two are going to be bad. Who's going to get the number 1 overall pick? And they played their hearts out. So I don't even know if they won that game. Oh, they did because you know why? The Browns got the number 1 pick. So with that being said, when Ryan Fitzpatrick was the quarterback, and I know that we've talked a lot about Tua Tagovailoa. I apologize for pronouncing his last name wrong.
Hey, you're not the only one who gets last names wrong around
here. There
are
a lot of rumors out there with a lot of steam behind them that say that Tua is going to sit out this year and he's going to redshirt. He's going to get healthier with that hip problem. And if he does come in, it might be later in the season or due to a Ryan Fitzpatrick injury. Now, I truly believe that if it's not Fitzpatrick or if it is Fitzpatrick, he still might find success with quarterback Troy.
Patrick is always solid. He's always solid.
See, Fitzpatrick is always solid for fantasy. He's the definition.
And the thing is, they're always going to be down. So what are they going to do?
Right?
Throw.
Throw. He's the definition of a gunslinger in the NFL. He's going to be throwing those deep balls like he just don't care, slinging it all around the field. And Devontae Parker and Preston Williams are direct beneficiaries of that. So look out for him to make some crazy plays. I did see a really good point made that, he has these insane highlights because of Fitzpatrick. He may not be the most accurate quarterback. He's just throwing him up there. But still, man, the guy has crazy athleticism. Do I think he puts up wide receiver 1 numbers this year? Because I know that's what our segment was. Wide receiver 2s that put up wide receiver 1 numbers. I don't think he does that. But I think he becomes even more of a reliable wide receiver 2 for your team. So I thought it'd be beneficial if I brought him up because he's going to be helpful.
For sure. And I had my eye on him, especially in Dynasty and Keeper leagues, because he's going to be a beast going forward. I truly believe that. And look, this segment might as well be called just, underrated wide receivers who we think are going to emerge this year. We just named it wide receiver 2s who could become wide receiver 1s. But yeah, so it works either way. It definitely works either way. And I'm excited about Preston Williams. Man, we're bringing up some good names. So, all right, so my third choice is going to be, so I kind of have a combo here because I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's either, I think this is a bold statement here. I think either Michael Gallup or CD Lamb are going to surpass Amari Cooper as the number 1 quarterback in Dallas. I'm not saying that's going to happen for sure, but I think it's a possibility. Look, I love Amari Cooper. I think he's great. Probably likely he's still going to be the number 1 wide receiver. Sorry, Jesus. Wide receiver in Dallas.
It's all good. You sound great.
But I think that it's possible that one of these guys emerge. And the reason why I throw them both in there is because I don't know enough about CeeDee Lamb. Haven't watched him play a lot. I don't know much about the guy, but I'm excited about him. I did choose him as my rookie that's going to emerge this year when we did that on our first episode. Mm-hmm. So I just think, and the whole point of this was there's a guy on a team who's for sure number 1, and he's going to be surpassed by somebody. So I think it's possible that Michael Gallup or CD Lamb surpass Cooper as the number 1 guy there.
Yeah, that is a great choice. And I say that because Amari Cooper has a track record in the NFL of putting up monstrous games and winning your team weeks. And then the next week, putting up literal zeros for your team. And he's done this multiple times. It's not like he did it once last year and once the year before that. He's done it a handful of times.
As an Oakland Raiders fan,
I know all about it, right? Not to say he's not a great wide. See, now I'm doing it. Great quarterback. Not to say he's a great wide receiver. I just think he's prone to disappearing on the field. And when those situations occur, someone else is going to soak up those targets. Dak, a lot of people don't know this. Well, they do, but we seem to forget about it because we always think about Lamar Jackson's great year last year. Dak Prescott put up great numbers last year. He threw for over 4,500 yards. Someone's going to be catching the ball there in Dallas. And it's just a matter of time before Amari Cooper lays a turd for your team and someone else is going to soak up those targets. Who will it be? Michael Gallup has been there in the past and proven to be that reliable option. CeeDee Lamb can easily sneak in there and be just as good for your team. So it definitely in dynasty leagues, he's worth picking up for sure, and potentially being a great
rookie dynasty drafts are looking exciting this year. I think
they are, but we have to keep into account, man, with all this crazy stuff going on in the world. Our expectations we might not be too high.
That's true. That's very true. Okay, so you obviously had one more honorable mention, so we don't got to get in depth about it. But my honorable mentions were Calvin Ridley and Mike Williams. So again, those were more obvious ones, and I had those written down before we texted about it, and that's why I tried to play it off like, "Oh, no worries, man. Like, let's just talk about it on the show." So, what was your other honorable mention?
Well, you mentioned Michael Gallup, so that was a good one.
Oh, okay.
And the other two I had were Jarvis Landry and Marvin Jones Jr.
Oh, okay.
Those are players that have, reliable veterans in the NFL who are both number 2s on their team. Who, I mean, I've always aimed for Marvin Jones in fantasy drafts.
He's
a late round pick, but he has such a high ceiling every single week. He can catch 2 bombs for 60 yards apiece and just put up an explosive number for your fantasy team. And in your flex spot or that weekly start spot, you want that kind of player who's going to have that high risk, high reward type of day. And Marvin Jones Jr. is always someone I look forward. And then Jarvis Landry is just a PPR monster. So someone to look out for to catch a lot of passes in fantasy.
Too bad Marvin Jones is opposite my dude, Kenny Galladay. Like he's just the best.
Yeah, he's good.
All right. All right. To wrap up the show, let's do our bold prediction of the week. And this week, our bold question of the week is, who will dethrone Christian McCaffrey as the best fantasy player in football? It's very rare that a player 2 years in a row is the best player in fantasy football. It's happened, but it's pretty rare. Like it doesn't happen every year. So
and I'll step in really quick.
Yeah,
it's even rare to say. Is rare or word? Oh man,
it might be more rare. I think it's like fun. Rare. It's like
it's even more rare that you see players at the same position repeat year after year. So think about that: Christian McCaffrey's, Michael Thomas's, Lamar Jackson's. It's very rare that those guys repeat this year. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. He did nothing compared to what he did 2 years ago. So just be on the lookout for that. It's highly unlikely that those guys are going to put the same numbers. But the reason why people still draft them at that draft capital
is great, but
because they're still going to receive those same targets, those same shares. It's just a matter of they can produce.
Well, that's true, because even if Christian McCaffrey doesn't do that, he's still going to get the same volume no matter what.
Definitely. All right. So I've been going first a lot. I want to hear yours today.
So look, mine isn't a far fetch. It's not. But I guarantee you, most people would argue with me on this and say, no, that's not going to happen. So to me, it's a bold prediction. And
let's hear it.
No surprise here. I think my dude, Ezekiel Elliott, is going to be the number 1 player in fantasy this year. Look, he is getting better and better as a catcher every year. His catching numbers, targets, and performance as a catcher are going up every year. I don't know why. It's just like this guy, even when he has a bad game, like he still gets you 15 points every week. He rarely ever disappoints. Like
very reliable.
A lot of people, like, he'll get you 15 points for 3 weeks straight, and people will be like, what's wrong with Zeke? And I'm like, nothing. Just take those 15 points. When you have a guy who has a bad game and gets you 15 points, I'll take it. And I just, I love him. I have him in several leagues and as Dynasty Keeper leagues, 2, but yeah. And I have him in a 6 keeper league, in pick 6 keeper league, and I have him in a 2 keeper league. And I'm just a big fan of him. And look, I'm a Niners fan, so I have to root for the Cowboys offense when I watch them. But I just think, and I'm and he's led the league in rushing several times. But that doesn't mean he leads the league in fantasy points several times. I think this is a year where he leads the league in fantasy points.
Most definitely. That's a good guess. That's a solid guess.
Yeah, it's not like, I'm taking like a top 5 ranked guy and it's not a bold prediction necessarily, but I think a lot of people would try to argue with me on that. So I think it is a bold prediction.
Yeah. Well, I can say, by the way, great choice. I can say without a doubt, this is probably a bold prediction. If you remember our bold prediction from last episode, it was who was going to finish up the season as the overall QB1 on the year. And my choice was Kyler Murray. So my bold prediction for this week of who's going to be the number 1 overall fantasy option, I am sticking with Kyler Murray.
Wow.
And I got a few reasons why. Last year, he put up 3,700 yards and 20 touchdowns. And on the ground, he put just under 550 yards and another 4 touchdowns. That's great for fantasy. He finished as like the QB 5 or 6 or something like that. It was great. It was great to see a rookie find success like he did. You compare that, right, with the great all-hailing Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's passing yards last year, now people are already going to – I don't want to hear the hate, all right? Lamar Jackson runs too, way more than Kyler Murray. I understand that. But Lamar Miller's passing last year was 5 or I think almost 6,000 yards less. Not 6,000. Kyler Murray threw for 3,700 yards. Lamar Jackson threw for 3,100 yards, right? So nearly 600 yards less. Thank you. Stat correction. Now you might say, well, Lamar Jackson had 36 touchdowns compared to Kyler Murray's 20. I think Kyler Murray is going to become the ultimate weapon this year for his team. They're going to unleash him. This is the Cardinals' year with that Cliff Kingsbury offense to just let it go. They have the talent around him for him to succeed. They're making moves on the defense. They're making move on the offensive line. Something's brewing in Arizona, and it's all getting hyped behind Kyler Murray. This is just a projection. This is my very first projection. I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that Kyler Murray this year puts up 4,300 yards, right? That's only that's only 800 yards more, 40 touchdowns.
Oh my goodness.
Which we saw a couple of people do that, not last year, but we've seen people do it in the past.
I mean, he has Hopkins on his team now.
He has Hopkins on his team. And I see him rushing for 800 yards and 8 TDs, which is 200 yards more and 4 more TDs on the ground.
Like, you're high on Murray, and I'm so mad because I traded him away in our two quarterback dynasty league. I traded him last year, and I'm just always going to regret that. But I think he's going to be great. I think, we've seen this trend of similar type quarterbacks, quarterbacks who can run, who can scramble, and who can also just chuck it. And it's been happening every year. Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray's. It seems like that's a very possible trajectory, like going towards Kyler Murray. And, these guys, it's crazy. So I don't doubt you there. And we'll see.
It's a bold pick.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of First Round Fantasy. Thank you, everybody, for watching it. Look, that's a trend. Gabe finishes his water at the end of the show. I don't know what the statement should be. The bottle is empty or something like that. We'll come up with something better than that. The jug is gone or whatever. But yes, thank you for watching. For Jacob, for Gabe, we really appreciate it. Please leave us in the comment section what you think of every topic that we discussed. Who do you think is going to emerge from being a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 to maybe one of those number 1 wide receivers? Which app do you prefer to play fantasy football on? And who do you think will be the number 1 overall fantasy player this year? Let us know in the comment section. We would love to hear your thoughts. We will see you all in a couple weeks here, but don't forget, once preseason or when preseason is supposed to happen, we're going to start going weekly because there's going to be a lot more news if the NFL season even happens. We're hoping it does safely.
Stay safe, people.
Yes, everybody stay safe. And again, we'll see you next episode. Take care.